Hi, I'm Kraig Klaus, and this is State 48 Homeowner.
Hey everybody, welcome to the State 48 Homeowner Podcast, and we are here with Kraig Klaus and Steve Farrington for our April market update.
Beautiful. How you doing, Scott?
Excellent. How you doing?
Good, brother. Good.
Ready to go. Let's do this.
Woo!
So let's talk about this roller coaster.
Which one?
I think we're. I think the correction that we had the second half of last year, I think we can almost officially declare that over. The way things have changed this month or this year so far. We were at a high in November of almost 4 months of supply. We're down under 2 months again today. Our average price per square foot is the highest it's been in 6 months. The sold price per square foot going back to September of 22. Our median sales price in March was down 5% from last year, but up 2% from February. That makes 2 months in a row that our median sales price has increased. So it's a matter of supply is decreasing. Demand is not increasing so much as it's holding steady.
But same with, inventory as
Period.
well. I mean, it's
Right.
it's crazy how a year ago it was definite seller's market. Then we went balanced, then we went buyers, then we came back to kind of a high balanced, low seller.
And now we're definitely in a seller's market at under 2 months. And, a big part of the demand difference is the iBuyers, right? I mean, at the first half of last year, they were buying like crazy. And then they got stuck and stopped really making good offers, second half of last year. So that demand from them, from wholesale investors in general, has been down. Now, Open Door being the biggest iBuyer has cleared out a lot of that active inventory they've been sitting on. They're down probably a third of what they had at late last year. So we expect hopefully in the second quarter some of that demand to come back from them, and that will help. Based on just trends, the third quarter we always see a little bit of a dip. I mean, that's August is in that, which here August school starts, things slow down. Typically it'll ramp up a little bit after Labor Day before the holidays. So what we're expecting and what we're seeing is that the second quarter should be a very positive quarter for home values and appreciation. And again,
but not so much for volume. I don't think
no,
we're going to
not
see
for volume.
we're not seeing enough written
down.
stuff to see May
Correct.
be at its normal.
And we're well below the normal volume, especially considering the last couple of years in terms of number of transactions and that. But when we look at as far as what we currently are sitting on, what's currently active and what's currently under contract is actually almost identical to what we were at the middle to end of June of last year, which was the beginning of the thing
The
going
big shift,
the other way. Now we're coming back out of that and going back into the other. And with rates still being higher, you have a lot of sellers, again, we talked about it before, that are more in love with their mortgage than they are their home. And that's keeping inventory down.
Yeah.
And so there's a number of factors, but I think the biggest thing that we can feel confident in saying, now again, Steve will talk about there's a lot of things that can change that between now and even the time this comes out, or a month from now. But I think the idea is that the data is showing us an actual, not just data, but our actual interactions and things that we're experiencing as a team with listings, getting offers on them, and that type of thing, that we're coming out the other side of our correction. And it was a small correction considering how much we gained. So I
correction in home prices and values. Is that
correct.
okay?
Yep.
Which was a necessary correction.
Absolutely. And there's still more. I mean, let's face it. I mean, you don't gain 60-something% in appreciation in 2.5 years and not see some sort of correction.
Yeah.
Period. And you have historically more low mortgage rates for
The same period
2
of time.
years,
yeah.
and
Right.
you're going to have a little bit of a correction. We saw some of that in last year, second half. There'll probably be a little bit in the third and maybe fourth quarter this year. And I'm not even going to attempt to predict beyond that because there's too many things going on in 2024, as we know. So, but I think it's a good sign. I think overall, as a seller right now, they have a lot more confidence and a lot more positivity, and buyers are starting to come around to the idea that inventory's down, that they need to be on it and aggressive and ready to go.
Well, and it's funny you say that because you're not even going to predict beyond because, of all the speed bumps and curveballs that have been thrown at, us economically and the Federal Reserve and inflation rates and the fastest pace of rate hikes. Just something I was reading this morning before our podcast was Kiplinger's. It's basically for investors and for economics, and they forecast like what they project the year-end interest rates to be, inflationary rate, GDP. They now have GDP numbers, inflationary rates, and interest rate figures that say if there's a recession and if no recession, if there's a recession and if no recession, they have two different figures. And that's really kind of what we're seeing looking forward from even, some of the best of the best when it comes to forecasting things looking ahead. And, interest rates, at least home prices and home values have steadied, which is fantastic.
They're increasing, yeah.
They're
data
increasing.
shows
Absolutely.
they've increased in the last couple months, yeah.
You've got low inventory.
Yep. Well, and it's funny you say that about that because Cromford report, which a lot of that data comes from, I think they mentioned it last week, and I think their projection, because they always project out for what the next quarter will be or the next month will be in that, and they've had it outside of their what they call comfort level of plus or minus like 2% for the first time in their history, 20 plus years, like twice in the last couple months, where they under projected what the sold price per square foot would be, what volume would be, and all of that. And even Michael said in the thing, he's like, that's the first time that's happened, and we're okay with it. Like, we're excited that we were wrong in that direction. And so it's one of those when, the market is moody. I mean, let's face it, it is. And it's one that it's not the typical where we could look at lagging data and say, okay, project this out because this has historically how things have gone. That's out the window because there's too much volatility. There's too much uncertainty. There's too much of this going on. So all we can do is live in the market of the moment. And that's what we're in.
Well,
right
and
now.
it all comes back to this is all resulting from a pandemic.
Correct.
And we can't go back to 1919 and compare apples to apples because that was a completely different economy and systems, and there was no internet.
What the pandemic did was shine a bright light on the fact that for 10 years, builders didn't build to the normal levels to keep up a population.
The brightest of
And
lights.
we were already down in inventory so low. I mean, I didn't have time to even go back and look, but I would have, from experience, say that we're pretty similar to the end of 2019 when I look at active inventory and homes under contract, days on market, month supply, things like that. So when you accelerate what happened with COVID on top of that, now you had less people wanting to put their home on the market. Then interest rates go from even 5 to 2.5. I mean, that's going to accelerate that. Right. But overall, it's a sign of lack of inventory nationwide for homes. And builders, since last summer, pulled back on a lot of projects they were planning. So once we get a 5 in front of rates, and
a lot of that had to do with trades just not being able to,
and fear and uncertainty, because we've heard for 2 years a crash is coming, and there's been no data for that, but we keep hearing that because, again, like I've said before, it's easy to say, and when it doesn't happen, nobody's mad. But the reality is, once demand, if iBuyers start buying again, rates get a 5 in front of them, builders haven't been building this whole time at their normal levels, so we're not in that situation where all of a sudden we're going to be oversupplied anytime soon, barring some unforeseen change.
Well, let's take a look at interest rates.
Let's do that.
And we'll get back on that roller coaster. So we'll get off. Kraig's roller coaster seems to be slowing down a little bit with housing and inventory.
I think we're starting to head back.
Now, when we have Kraig talking, it's generally a lot more level. It's not as dynamic. It changes as when we have you talk. So let's point out, we are recording this a few days before.
Almost a week.
Yeah, almost a week before. It's a Tuesday before. So it may be a little bit different.
Well, it's going to be, and I'll speak to that. I mean, today, we're what, April 11th today?
Yes.
Yep.
April 11th. We currently 30-year fixed rates, as of this morning, when I looked, and again, it could change by 4 o'clock this afternoon, rates are back into the high 6s. We're looking right around 6.72% is your average 30-year fixed rate for a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac home loan with potentially some cost, depending on the lender, depending on the bank, depending on your scenario. That's the average. Unfortunately, this was after a relief in interest rates, very much like we saw towards the end of January, which kind of helped accelerate. And we saw that buyer activity come back, where interest rates dipped into the low sixes for those same Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan scenarios. And we even had 5% interest rates for FHA and VA loans, which are priced differently, a little bit more aggressively, because they're encouraging home ownership, for veterans and a lot of first-time home buyers. So again, we had that dip towards the end of March, and then all of a sudden we've got the April 7th, Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs report, which was lower than expected by 1,000, but not low enough. Not low
they
enough.
Sure are
so
picky.
You guys know it, sure. But not low enough, and unfortunately that just, and we're right back on that roller coaster, and we're a day. I mean, you're looking, February, April 12th is going to be the release of the CPI index, the Consumer Price Index report for inflation. Consumer inflation is coming out April 12th. And this is going to be a very volatile report, depending on which way it swings and how people digest it. And unfortunately, because the way that the inflationary reports work is that it's a rolling 12-month average. So the number that the March 2023 CPI figure that's reported in April, because they have time to consolidate the data, it replaces the March 2022 number. Now, March 2022 was a low inflationary number. It was basically, I think it was 0.3, which, when you're talking 0.5, 0.6, and all of a sudden there's that dip in the chart of 0.3. So if the number even comes in at 0.4, which would be lower, the trend lower of inflation, it replaces a number to where you could see that figure go from 5.5 to 5.6 on the core inflationary rate, which takes out food and energy. And if that rises, that could again cause interest rates to jump back up into that 7%
Don't
range.
say it. No.
Well,
No,
and it could, and again, like when I tell you, it depends on how investors digest it, because you've got the headline inflationary report, which adds back in food and energy. And if you look back to where we were headed in March of 2022, energy costs and food costs were much higher. And that figure in March of 2022 was 1% for the headline inflationary report. That's huge. That was on our way to 9.1% in June, just 3 months later. Well, the projections are that the March 2023 headline CPI is going to be about 2 or 0.3. So you could see the headline inflation go from 6% to the mid to low 5% range, which is a huge drop.
Big time.
Fantastic. We're on the right path. And you could see the core data come in 1/10 higher, and it depends on how investors are going to digest it, react to it. And then the beauty of it is you've got the Fed releasing their minutes from their Fed meeting just a couple weeks ago, when they did hike the interest rate another quarter, about 2 hours after that. So that's going to add more volatility and spice. So again, it's really how this is all being taken in. And once again we get past this volatile period and we start getting those lagging factors like shelter and other costs coming out of consumer inflation, you're going to start seeing a trend downwards, and a trend downwards in larger increments that people want, that investors want. I mean, going down 0.2 and 1/10 isn't exciting anyone, obviously, as we can tell, because of the volatility. And that's the real problem, is that it's just not enough. Like I said, jobs report missed.
Right.
But it wasn't.
It didn't miss more than
didn't miss enough. So, unfortunately, we'll see what happens with that report. And again, by the time this is released, we could be back to the low 6s, we could be back to the low 7s, or we could stay right where we're at if everything just stays status quo.
This video is brought to you by Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions. The Klaus Team is different. With the Klaus Team, you have someone on your side. Where you live and make memories is important. We have more unique strategies than anyone else to help you accomplish what matters most to you. We can help you with traditional real estate as well as other options such as our lease purchase programs. We can help you buy first then sell, and we can bring you instant offers. We're here to help our neighbors achieve the American dream and help them build wealth through home ownership. For more info or to start your home search, visit us online at klausteam.com.
Now, projections going forward are that when the shelter costs start coming out, and that should be May, June,
Yes.
in those reports, that's going to start fueling the interest rates to start dropping back to that where we get low sixes, high fives, mid fives as we roll into the latter part of the second quarter into that third quarter. So, to your point, we usually see that lag.
Yeah.
But if buyers get back into the marketplace because that's what they've been waiting for, it could surprise to the upside.
Yeah. No, and I think, that the market of the moment is still the idea. Like, again, you've hearing us talk about what expectations are for the future. We don't know. What we know is what's happening today and what's going on right now. So if you're on the fence or that, the sooner you start, the better, just because of what what can change and all of that. It'll be very interesting to see the June of this year CPI, since it'll be compared to the June of last year.
What that headline inflation number looks
that'll
like.
make everybody happy.
Well, the headline figures, the peak was 9.1% in June of 2022. Currently, from the last report, again, because we're previous to it being released, was already down to 6%.
Right.
We talked about in our sales meeting, we've had 8 consecutive months of inflation trending downward. Again, it's just not enough to excite anyone for some strange reason. But that's to go from 9.1 to 6%. So the Fed's actions are working. The problem with the Fed is they're driving forward on the freeway, but they're driving using the rearview mirror.
Right.
They're not looking out the windshield.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because, as you can tell, when I keep saying lagging data and we're looking behind and we don't get March's figures till April report and shelter doesn't come out because it's a 12-month lagging factor, they're not looking at the current trend and seeing overall inflation starting to trend downward. So if they keep their foot on the gas, it can potentially drive us into a very heavy recession. Right. But maybe they let up a little bit. Maybe they see it. Maybe the banking issue that we talked about last time. Maybe somebody grabs a hold of them and says, "Hey, we've got an election coming up. You've got to figure this out." Not that politics plays a part, but they do. So again, all of those things play a factor into it. And the Fed, like I said, unfortunately, they're driving straight down the freeway using the rearview mirror, and it's unfortunate. But hopefully they get a clue.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the good news is the market's moving in the right direction for both parties involved, and things are continuing to show good signs, and that's again compared to what we were dealing with at the end of last year when everybody was starting to panic a little bit. This is definitely a good sign, and I think hopefully will continue.
Yeah. Now, Kraig, you work with a lot of sellers.
Correct.
Why are they moving right now?
The majority of them out of state for various reasons. I've said, I tell people in listing appointments, I've sold more homes to people moving out of Arizona since COVID hit than I did in the 17 years prior. A lot of their various reasons: family, smaller towns, smaller rural areas, land, things like that. We've had some downsizing, upsizing, things like that, but it seems like a lot of them or selling rental properties that they had for a long time, realizing that, it's just time to move on from that type of thing.
Yeah, we're not saying that we don't have a lot of buyers coming into the state too, so they're being replaced.
Yeah, the sellers that I'm selling them to are buyers that are coming typically from out of state, or moving up, or depending on price point, first time buyers. Because like we've said before, even if interest rates are at 6 3/4, if you're renting, you're paying 100%. So what's 6 3/4 to start really?
In the buyer activity I'm seeing on the other side of the listing is exactly that. You've got people that maybe came here for a job opportunity, they got settled, they found the area that they wanted, and now they're ready to buy a home, or first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers are still making up 28 or 29% of all home purchases in the U.S. So they've stayed steady. Is it the 34% during the pandemic? But no, it's still almost 30%. One out of almost 3 home buyers is still a first-time home buyer because they're seeing the value in home purchases, and maybe they've seen that prices have dropped as far as they can. Rates again are going to be where they're at. I can refinance in the future. I can take advantage of getting a home now because maybe they're hearing us or the reports that, hey man, rates dip 5, buyer activity picks up, and we've already talked about extremely low inventory.
Yeah.
Are we right back to where we were? No, but that acceleration is going to cause, at least in my eyes, where you're going to have a lot more buyer activity, competition for a home, especially, quality listing, where you might get back to a multiple offer situation.
Well, and I have a hard time seeing a way that the house would be worth less at the end of this year than it is today.
Yeah.
And so the longer you wait, trying to save 0.5% or 1% in interest, but if you're paying $20,000 more for the house, there goes, that point. So,
well,
yeah, I found it interesting too. When we first introduced the buy then sell, it was because the buying experience was so competitive, and now it's not, and we're seeing just as many sellers take advantage of buy then sell,
sure.
especially when they're moving out of our market and into another. And
it's
neat that we're still able to help them with that. And
I
pretty much no matter where they're moving.
I always have to joke. I have to be careful, not telling somebody, no, you're going to use this program because it is such an amazing program. You're going to love it. You're going to wish you had it the last time you did it, and that. So it's one of those where, having gone through it and used it myself and done over 50 of them. I mean, it's a phenomenal. And I've got clients right now looking in Kentucky. They're going out next week. They're eligible. They're ready to buy if they want.
That's
if they
awesome.
find something, and then they get to do that. They've got 4 kids in a big house and trying to show it and keep it clean. Now they get to find their house in Kentucky, close, move in, and then we'll list and sell this.
And it's expanded too now that, because it used to be, certain states and certain loan programs. Now it's expanded a little bit. You can use people like Steve to take
or
care of that.
Or if you're using a new build and the builder's offering incentives, you can still use their lender for the primary loan and use this other program for the bridge loan. So there's, like I said, I don't see a downside, and I've been doing this a long time. I've done a lot of different things and programs, and like I said, for us personally, when we went to do it, we looked at every program we offer, and that was the best one to accomplish our goals. And I think that most people are seeing that, especially like you said, moving out of state or new builds, it's even better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it's, just to kind of circle back to, you're talking about people that are maybe moving out of state using the buy then sell, going back to people that maybe moved to the state, rented for a bit, found the area, now they're ready to buy, or a first-time home buyer. Key word that you said in that was they're prepared now.
Yeah.
Now they're ready to make an offer on a home in Kentucky because they went through those steps prior to shopping in Kentucky. They didn't fly out there to Kentucky and be like, well, good luck.
Found a house, but I got to sell mine.
Now I got to start that process. And my point is if you're ready to buy a home, whether it's a buy then sell or a traditional product, FHA, VA, Fannie, Freddie, a jumbo product, talk to someone like myself or a trusted professional.
Even if you're considering it in the next 6 to 9 months, let's start that conversation now, and we can help kind of lay out that path for you.
There's a buyer that I was working with that was just kind of window shopping. Finally convinced her, hey, go get your pre-qualification, and she found that she was about $150,000 off of all the things that she was falling in love with.
Okay,
correct.
So that's another reason to get started.
Then you're looking back at older, and you're going, no, nothing compares to what you were.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it always gives people the accurate cost, what's involved, what the process really is, what the next steps are. Especially if you're thinking, what is it? We're in April now. If you're thinking this summer, you need to be talking to someone now.
Yep.
I mean, that there's no hesitation. Even if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. If you're like, oh, that's too expensive, then you hold off, or you make a plan and create a plan going forward. It's ideal because, to your point, like, she was looking at homes that were $150,000. She was shopping out of her price range, and I find that quite a bit with people. But I'm also able to help them peel back some of those other expenses that they have to eliminate them prior to moving into a home that they can increase that buying power. So it's absolutely something to do is be prepared.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
You should always know where you're at.
Trust me, I spent, when, my wife and I were looking for the house that we're in now, I mean, it was hanging out on a Sunday morning having coffee or sitting in bed with the laptop going, ooh, look at this one. Ooh, look at, and it was like you fall in love with something at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. By the time you're pre-approved, that house could potentially be gone, or you find out that, I can't afford that one. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, just be prepared. It's ideal. It really, really just it gives you peace of mind and confidence heading out into the marketplace.
Yeah, and as always, if you want more information, you want a one-on-one consultation, or just want to ask questions, give me a call when it comes to the real estate side of it. Mortgage would be Steve, obviously, but would love to talk to you. It's not hard to get me to talk real estate, obviously.
No.
And it's easy to find us at KlausTeam.com.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Thanks for spending time with us this week at State 48 Homeowner, the ins and outs of owning an Arizona home. You can connect with us for more information, submit topics you'd like us to discuss further, and you can see relevant videos, give us feedback, answer your real estate questions, and more at state48homeowner.com.